Hi, it's Louise Platt from Spiral Bright Insight. I'm a galactic and intuitive astrologer, and I wanted to talk in this video about the upcoming new moon, which is taking place in the sign of Aquarius, and that is on the 29th of January 2025, when the sun and the moon will meet at 9 degrees 51 minutes of Aquarius. Now, this is a really interesting new moon, and there have been some really strong themes and messages coming through to me as I've been sort of contemplating and tuning into the chart. So rather than go through the chart and sort of talk through all the aspects and really pick it apart, I've decided with this video to kind of take a more, I don't know, a bird's eye view to some extent. I will be talking about some of the aspects as they are talking to me, but I'm not going to go through sort of detail in this one. But, I hope that what I share will resonate and that there will be something that you are able to take away from it and reflect on it in terms of what you're experiencing at this time. And what I do with the way I work is I use traditional astrology, but I also add in galactic astrology. So I will be weaving in some of the key fixed star alignments and cosmic influences and activations that are taking place at this time. And of course, we're working with Aquarius, and Aquarius is very galactic. So there's no doubt that we have some really, really strong cosmic forces and wisdom coming through, and not only through sort of the energy of the moon itself, but also in terms of what is happening in the galactic chart. So just to kind of give you a little rundown, sort of on a more generic basis, it is an Aquarius new moon. That is when the sun and the moon meet at exactly the same point in the chart. Every new moon in the year in the zodiac calendar marks the start of a new lunar cycle. So we have, because the sun and the moon are together, the moon is effectively dark because it can't it doesn't have the benefit of the sun shining on it. So, this is a time to really plant the seed for something, obviously recognizing that seeds need that darkness, that safe space. In order to be able to germinate and grow into something. So when we're working with the new moon, we're very much working with sort of setting intentions, thinking about what we want to invite in, what we want to create. It's a very fertile time. There's also a lot of faith and trust required because, when we're sort of thinking about the darkness and what lies beneath the surface and buried in the ground, you don't necessarily know what is going on. You can't see it, but you have to have faith that, nature and the universe is doing its work, and, eventually there will be something to show for it. So this is very important, I feel, with each new moon. And obviously, as as the sun and the moon move round the 12 signs, each time we have a new moon, we are very much working with the energy of the sign that the moon and the sun are meeting in. So with Aquarius, this is the 11th sign of the zodiac. This is fixed air. Aquarius is the humanitarian of the chart. So whenever we're working with Aquarius, we are very much sort of focusing on something that is for the people, for the collective, for humanity, sort of all encompassing. So when things happen that are linked to Aquarius, it means that everybody is affected in some way. The Aquarius is the archetype of the water bearer. So there's a real sense, although Aquarius is an air sign, so we're sort of working with the intellect and with ideas and with light and energy. There is also the sense of sort of bringing water to the people, which is cleansing, which is nourishing, which is life-giving effectively, because we cannot function without, we cannot survive without water, but also very purifying, very cleansing. Now, Aquarius is the maverick as well of the zodiac. So Aquarian energy, very weird, very wonderful, very maverick, very unconventional, left field, will stand up and defy the mainstream and the status quo if there's an understanding that it is not sort of for the greatest good of the people. A sign very linked to freedom, to truth, to technology, to the future. And I think that is why often with Aquarius, with a strong Aquarius, you are seen as a bit sort of wacky and a bit zany because, It is almost as if you have access to something that is of the future, that isn't quite, that maybe, the populace or society isn't quite ready for. So you can sort of be seen as ahead of your time, but this is very much the sort of themes and the signatures that we're working with at the time of this new moon. Aquarius is also, very much about revolt, rebellion, revolution. So this might be something that is sort of, bubbling away under the surface. But, ultimately, when we're working with Aquarius, we are really honing in on what it is that makes us, each of us, unique and individual and as part of the collective. So it is about identifying, what it is that you have got to contribute to the greater good at this time. And beyond, very much sort of future facing. Now, Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. Uranus is the planet of, I don't know, chaos, discord, awakening. So there's a very strong theme of awakening coming through. And whenever Uranus is active, which he is, because he's the ruler of this lunation, but he is also at the time of the new moon stationary because he is about to station direct the following day. So this adds a real extra element of energy, of impact, of influence. When we're working with Uranus, Uranian energy, Aquarian energy, there can be really quite sudden, unexpected, groundbreaking events that take place. So if something comes out of left field that you just did not see coming, it's ultimately designed almost to shock or jolt you out of, I don't know, a sleep, stupor. If you're getting too comfortable, Uranus will come along and say, actually, no, I need to shake you awake because, there is work to do, there is growth to be had. So Uranus doesn't sort of create chaos for the sake of it. There is always order in the chaos, and ultimately it is about finding order through the chaos that comes through very strongly. But there's definitely something that is brewing at the time of this new moon, before, during, and after, that is likely to be very sudden, be very unexpected, and really sort of give us a jolt, a shock in some way. And because we're working with Aquarius and air, which is the intellect, the mind, ideas, information, this could be linked to new information that is coming through that is literally shaking us awake. Now, we're working also with the backdrop of the universal year number 9, which is very much linked to endings, to completion, very karmic, releasing, letting go, and sort of having that faith that, often we do need to cut things out in order to create space for something to come in. Now, the new moon itself is at 9 degrees of Aquarius. So we have got a lot of other sort of bodies within the chart all sitting at 9 degrees. So there's a real sort of theme coming through. This is, I think it's the 4th out of 6 consecutive new moons that are all taking place at the 9-degree point. So we also have this new year, this new moon is also the start of the Chinese Lunar Year of the Snake. So we are saying goodbye to the dragon energy that we've been working with in the past year and inviting in the energy of the snake. So this really is about regeneration, sort of death, rebirth, very strong archetypes coming through, shedding the skin, deep wisdom, deep insight, and very ancient knowledge comes through. So there's lots of really exciting energy sort of coming up, which will mirror and support the energy of the number 9, the universal year that is sort of holding the space for us as we move through these next 11 months now, because the number 9 year started at the 1st of January. But, there's a real, before I even start talking about some of the aspects in this new moon, there is a real sort of nod to the fact that we have to really complete a cycle if we are to move into something new. Aquarius is really helping us to connect with something that is in our future and start to bring it forward, but also recognizing that if we want to embrace the future, if we want to kind of step into a more sort of a new evolutionary phase for humanity, which is effectively, what we're sort of kicking off with this new moon, we have to let go of a lot of the old ways because it is the old in so many cases that holds us back. Now, I've sort of used the word karma a few times there, and I really do feel that this new moon is very karmic, but it is also very galactic. So what I'll do is I'll show you the chart. Okay, so we'll just look at this chart fairly briefly. We can see at the top here, we've got this set for Barnsley in the UK. We've got the sun and the moon at 9 degrees of 51 minutes of Aquarius. You can also see that Pluto at 1 degrees and Mercury at 2 degrees are also joining in the party in this sign, in this part of the chart, and we have Ceres there ahead at 20 degrees. So the first thing that I want to highlight here is the fact that Pluto and Mercury are very close together. And obviously, a few days prior to the moon, earlier this week, we had the Pluto-Sun cazimi when the sun met Pluto at 1 degree of Aquarius, and I shared some insight about that particular event. And what it feels to me is that, Pluto, the sun really sort of illuminated something that Pluto was really sort of keen to expose and to uncover. And now the sun has moved ahead, the Mercury is following behind and is really seeking to understand what that is, really get sort of its head around all the ins and outs, and then start to share that information once Mercury has really grasped what is going on. So there is definitely something that is coming up to be shared, to be understood at this new moon. We also have, if you look further down, we have this interesting bunching of bodies, cosmic bodies at 9, 8, and 7 degrees of Scorpio. So this is creating a square to the sun and the moon. And particularly, I want to talk about Hecate, which is the goddess of spells and magic, very linked to witchy energy. We also have Vesta, who is another goddess, and she really highlights the themes of the hearth and the home and our inner light, sort of the spark or the flame that cannot be extinguished, and really sort of coming home to that. And she also really highlights where we are, where we're able to show the greatest and the highest level of dedication to our spiritual path. Very linked to purity, very feminine, but also a real sort of drive to survive and sort of see and continue, let that light, let that fire keep burning no matter what happens. So instantly here you've got, this really very strong exact square taking place. And down here we have got asteroid Atlantis, which seems to show up in almost all the charts at the moment and every video that I'm sharing. So, I'm happy to say that Atlantis is still, making quite a strong and strong appearance in this chart. Scorpio is very much the sign of transformation, of deep healing, of seeing what is below the surface, of sort of facing the shadow, walking with the shadow in order to bring through the light and transform into our highest potential and our highest expression. So with this square, there is a real sort of focus on tension being created, a real push-pull in order that something is transformed, that something is healed. And for me, with Hecate sitting so close, sitting alongside Vesta, I'm getting a real strong sense of it feels to me as if, this is a real sort of healing and almost the ending of, but it's almost like the healing of and the transformation and the empowerment of the witch wound. Sort of with Vesta there, recognizing that, so many souls across many different lifetimes have had some really quite horrific experiences when they have stood up against the mainstream, where they have dared to defy sort of what convention and what society expects, and this is absolutely the witches who have been persecuted. It's also the healers, it's the mavericks, it's anybody who has dared to stand up, those who have dared to question what has been expected. They've stood against, they've defied the government and the leadership, in whatever context. There's so many different versions and so many different stories, but that has resulted in those people either being marginalized, ostracized, put out to the fringe, rejected from a society, or, worse, persecuted, tortured, murdered. There are so many stories across so many different sort of timelines in our history that relate to this. And I would say almost all of us have some sort of lineage or past or history that relates to that. Certainly, if you're watching content like this, I would imagine that you will be able to relate to that to some extent. And with Vesta next to Hecate, it just feels to me that, it is a reminder that no matter what happens, no matter how bad things get, the inner light, that inner flame, that spark can never be put out, and we have this sort of inner drive to constantly keep coming back, almost sometimes, yes, to repeat the same cycles, there are same lessons, the same sort of experience, the same wounds, but there is this knowledge that, even if the worst happens, the light continues and the flame cannot be put out. So that is a really beautiful, I think, acknowledgement to what so many of us may have experienced in our past. And certainly with this square to Aquarius, it is almost as if, it feels like the dawning of a new age for those souls who are here to question convention, who are here to stand up against the mainstream, because it is by doing that we are able to progress and move forward. If we always stay doing the same thing and not questioning and not sort of considering that there's a new way, then that change just never happens. And obviously, as Pluto's moved into Aquarius, he has completed his work in terms of almost destroying and creating the patriarchal system. So we are very early days into Pluto in Aquarius still, but there is a nod to there is a new way coming through. And yes, it requires, people to defy expectations and to stand up against the system. But with this square, it feels as if it's no longer going to be the case that anybody who does that effectively will get burnt or destroyed or taken down, especially with all those number nines. Now, you can't actually see it in this version of software because I can't Astro Gold doesn't have the asteroid Karma, but Karma is exactly opposite Aquarius at 9 degrees of Leo, sitting next to Varuna, which is a dwarf planet. Now, this is really cool, I think, very powerful, because that then creates a fixed T-square. Karma, the asteroid Karma, is something that I have only really been introduced to this week, thanks to one of my Galactic fellow astrologers, Ulrika Sullivan. She highlighted Karma in this T-square in her new moon video. That, this is really about fated events and energies that kind of create the theme of, something is happening here that was meant to happen. There's a real sense with the asteroid Karma and the energy of what goes around comes around. And particularly with Karma right next to Varuna, the dwarf planet, Varuna represents in astrology divine cosmic order and universal law and justice, and really requires us to confront the truth. So again, with these energies all sitting at the number 9, which is the number of completion and endings and releasing and letting go, it just feels so powerful. We are bringing in something that is very much of the future, that is very much for the people. It is going to really push humanity to grow, to evolve, to move forward. But in order to do that, we do need to face the karmic consequences and really explore, where we are perhaps in defiance or out of balance with universal law in order to bring everything back in, confronting truth, confronting new information that Pluto and Mercury are bringing up that, perhaps relates to that witch wound or, those people that perhaps they were marginalized in error, perhaps they actually were speaking truth and talking sense. There's so many different ways you can interpret this. And I also need to mention asteroid Atlantis because, with Atlantis in Scorpio, this is really bringing up some really deeply held memories and emotions. That are very, very healing, but they need to be brought to light. So again, this is the shadow potentially of some of Earth's history that again is coming forward, and which is part of this karmic experience and part of our evolution and our ability to move forward. We need to recognize what has happened in the past and decide, are we going to repeat those same mistakes? And also, is there something that we can bring forward from the past that will actually help us? Because not every part of the past is something that needs to be let go of. It is about really connecting to what it is that we want to uncover and sort of almost dig up from the Atlantean wisdom and all sort of, the amazing parts of the Atlantean civilization, but also what it is that we need to let go of and ultimately what we need to heal. I want to talk about, there's a few other energies here that are really relevant. If we look for where has Uranus is still in retrograde, obviously moves stations direct. In fact, let's have a look. Yeah, so Uranus is stationary at the moment and will move direct the next day, 23 degrees, 15 minutes of Taurus, sextile to Mars in Cancer, sextile to Venus and to Neptune up in Pisces. And again, there's another asteroid that I cannot sort of get access to on this AstroGold software, and that is asteroid Hawaii, which is the marker for me that I use for Lemurian connections. And Hawaii is currently at 22 degrees of Cancer. So right next to Mars, who's still in retrograde motion at 21 degrees of Cancer. So Hawaii is absolutely in sextile to Uranus. Now, Uranus is very much about sort of breaking through and helping us to awaken to new energies. And particularly in Taurus, I keep seeing that as things that are buried within the earth. And whether that is sort of knowledge, consciousness, whether that is crystals, and just sort of the wisdom that is held within Gaia, this is very much about breaking through so that that can come up and really support our awakening. So with the sextile to Cancer and to Hawaii, so effectively Lemuria, Mars in Cancer is very much sort of bringing us in to connect with our inner flame, with that inner self, our inner sanctuary, to really explore what home means at a very deep level, very emotional level with the Cancer energy. Lemuria sitting right next to Cancer, it feels like we are being asked to connect to our ancient experiences and memories of Lemuria, which would have been a much higher frequency and higher vibration. We're probably talking at least fifth dimensional Earth at that time. So with Cancer, Cancer really represents our ancestry, where we've come from, our foundations, our roots. And this Lemurian energy is right there in Cancer, right next to Mars at the same time in this beautiful sextile to Uranus. So really helping us to awaken to our memories and the frequencies that are held within the earth and within all of us ultimately to really help us to move forward. And obviously with Chiron in at 19 degrees of Aries at this time, Chiron is in a square to Mars and to Hawaii stroke Lemuria. So again, this is deeply healing as we connect to that inner sort of cellular ancestral memories and wisdom and light that is held within within all of us, we are able to really start to work on the healing of who we are and the identity through that square. And again, with the square, it is non-negotiable. It is going to happen come what may. So really, really powerful energies. And then with all this beautiful sort of cluster of planetary sort of representation up in Pisces, as we do sort of connect to that inner sanctuary, that inner light through Mars, through Hawaii in Cancer, it really helps us to rise higher, to connect with something outside of ourselves, to connect with our higher selves, to higher levels of consciousness, to really understand, that there is so much more than the sort of the tangible sort of 3D experience of what we can see and touch in our reality now. This takes us to other realms, potentially, other dimensions, other levels, much higher levels of consciousness, and steps us much more into a unified unity consciousness. Also very karmic, being sort of the final degrees of Pisces, and also very much dissolving what is no longer serving us. And with the North Node coming back to meet Neptune and Venus, again, this is very much propelling us forward to where we need to go. And this ultimately is, encouraging us to step into a much higher way of being, having much more compassion, much more sort of vision and creativity, unity and connection to one another and all that is coming through so strongly, but also ultimately just being more spiritual and understanding that, we are more than just our 3D physical vessels, that there is so much more to us. And it starts to really connect us to the truth that we are souls having a physical experience rather than human beings who have a soul. So it almost tips everything on its hind legs. So I'm going to show you another version of a chart. And this is from the galacticastrology.com website. This is just the conjunctions, so the fixed star and galactic point conjunctions rather than anything else, for the purpose of really not to overwhelm this chart. But I just want to highlight a few of the fixed star energies that are coming through. Now, the first one, where do we start? So let's start with the sun and the moon. Now there are no fixed stars, particularly in my frame of reference at or near 9 degrees of Aquarius, but there is a fixed star in exact opposition. So at 7 degrees of Leo, we have Cancri 55 or Rho Cancri. Now, this is the diamond star, and this is really, really beautiful energy. And in this opposition, it is as if this really high frequency diamond energy is holding space for us as we move through this time, as we start to connect with what it is that we want to bring in, that is very futuristic, that is really sort of, for the greater good, that is for humanity's evolution. With the diamonds, it's with the ability of the diamond to sort of reflect lots of different fractals and shards of light all over the place, bringing in all the colors, very pure, very high frequency, reminding us that, particularly, bringing us back to that Aquarian theme where everybody has a unique piece, a unique contribution to make. That everybody makes up one piece in the puzzle, but without the collective, we just don't have anything. So it's about sort of using, the diamond light to really capture the essence of that Aquarian age, and also reminding us that, diamonds are actually, originate as a piece of coal, and it is the extreme pressure that they are put under that kind of creates the diamond, the jewel that is created from the pressure. So again, it is like a reminder, much as with Hecate and what we've had to endure, that actually this is not an easy journey at all, not by any stretch of the imagination, but if you are able to withstand that pressure, then something most exquisite and most beautiful and so valuable can come out of that. And it really feels as if Rogue Cancri is holding the space, projecting that diamond light onto all of us at this time in order to really help us hold that higher frequency and that higher vision. Okay, so it's not actually showing on this chart because this chart obviously doesn't have Hecate, Atlantis, and Vesta showing up, but just at the sort of 8 degrees of Taurus, we also have Shadir, which is a Cassiopeian star, and Titawin in the Andromedan star system. So when we add these fixed stars that lie in the Taurus part of the chart, we are actually forming a fixed grand cross, which is creating even more tension than the fixed T-square that I talked about just now. So Shadir is one of the stars that, again, very high frequency, linked to the divine feminine, themes of royalty, of regal sovereignty, also linked to beauty and value. You know, if we think about the myth of Queen Cassiopeia, Andromeda's mother, you know, admired for her incredible beauty. So, you know, for me, this is really encouraging us to see the beauty, you know, potentially in the hardship, in the suffering, and in the sacrifice, which I'll come on to in a minute through the opposition that that star is creating in the galactic chart. But again, you know, very beautiful, divine feminine wisdom, you know, a new way of leadership coming through that is rooted in the divine feminine approach, you know, taking us away from the patriarchal system, very linked to angelic frequencies, mysticism, sort of a softness, but strength in the softness. And it is also said that beings from Cassiopeia serve as watchers, sort of overseeing us as we move through the different timelines. And also helping us to avoid catastrophe, which I find also very, very interesting. And so, you know, let's hope that that is actually the case. You know, through all this chaos and discord, you know, that there is some really beautiful fixed star and cosmic energy almost holding us from a universal perspective to help us move through the chaos and to achieve a new level of order. Sorry, I'm getting croaky now. In opposition, so this is next to Hecate and Vesta at 8 degrees of Scorpio, we have a crux. Now, I've talked about a crux several times before. A crux is the Southern Cross, so very much used for navigational purposes, very recognized in the Southern Hemisphere, linked to themes of sacrifice and also pain and suffering and being a victim, but really helping us to understand that, you know, there is always purpose in the sacrifice and the suffering that we have to experience or go through. A crux really helps us to connect to the matter. So the crux, the heart of the matter, which is effectively what lies within. And obviously, you know, the minute I say that, I'm thinking about Mars, you know, and sort of that inner light. Vesta, the hearth, the home, the inner flame, you know, it all feels very sort of coordinated and aligned. And with a crux and the fact that we have sort of four, you know, the two pathways meeting in the middle, a crux for me is really acknowledging that life, our experience on Earth as a human in this incarnation, is a journey. And you know, we can go in all different directions, and almost we have to try all the paths, because it is by walking all the different paths that we sort of get the most out of this journey. And ultimately, it isn't always about the destination, but it is about the paths that we take and the experience that we learn as we go. But ultimately, you know, we will always come back to that center point, which is the diamond that lies within, that has been formed under pressure of, you know, the sacrifice and the pain and the trauma and the hardship that, you know, is part of the human condition and the human journey. It is also linked to alchemy and spiritual alchemy, which I love, and also a real sense of, you know, because it was used as a navigational tool, it just reminds us to have faith and to trust that actually, you know, there is a bigger purpose, there is a bigger plan, there is a divine picture, there is universal order even in the chaos. So that is a really beautiful energy to have, you know, right next to Hecate, which obviously for me, it is almost sort of acknowledging that, you know, so many souls have had such traumatic experiences, but a crux helps us to understand the purpose of that and to see that, you know, the light was always deep within and the diamond was being formed under that pressure. And, you know, again, just going back to Vesta sitting there as well, you know, the light that could never be put out because it is so valuable. It is so multidimensional and it has got so many different facets to it. So absolutely beautiful sort of signatures and themes coming through there. Uranus is conjunct Capulus in the Perseus constellation. And again, I just love this because obviously Uranus, the ruling planet of this lunation, very linked to awakening, and Capulus in Perseus, very linked to the hero's journey. And also using the sword. Capulus had this powerful sword that he used to sort of cut through tyranny. You know, he was very much the warrior, the archetypal sort of courage to bear arms, to fight for good. But for me, the sort of the symbolism of the sword is about cutting through all the illusions. You know, so that is our first nod to of sort of breaking the spell. The second really sort of key alignment here is Altair right next to Mercury and obviously still conjunct Pluto. And Altair in the Aquila constellation is very much bringing in this theme of leadership, of strength, of the spiritual warrior, of having clarity suddenly. And Mercury is absolutely bringing clarity as Mercury connects with Altair, sort of giving us a real focus, you know, reminding us that we are all on a quest to embrace our own path, to perhaps see do something slightly differently in order to get a different result, but a better result, which again is very linked to the Aquarian energy. But also with Altair, there is a real strong connection to black magic, to dark arts, to spells, to using words and ideas and imagery in order to control, to manipulate, and you know, a real sense here of, you know, holding people in a trance or holding people hypnotized to sort of believe in a certain belief system or a way or an understanding. And as Pluto, as Altair is obviously very close to Pluto, but Mercury is now bringing the information that has been exposed through this connection to Pluto. Now Altair is helping with that process. And the way I see this is that we are suddenly, unexpectedly, because this is Aquarian territory, we are literally being sort of shaken awake from, sort of brought out the trance, brought out of that hypnotic trance. You know, the spell is being broken, and suddenly we can see things for how they actually are, not for the way we've been told they are. So, some really interesting but very strong messaging coming through around that. There's also a really strong link with Altair to Atlantis. So again, you know, does this have roots in Atlantis? Quite possibly, but we're absolutely getting new information through that has connections and that is helping us to move forward. Now, I've talked, you know, extensively in all my recent videos about the fact that, you know, the collection of planets and bodies in the final degrees of Pisces are very much activating Shet in Pegasus constellation. So this is really helping us to rise up, to see the bigger picture, to see the path ahead, see new horizons, embrace a multidimensional approach, release and break free from the chains that have held us bound, you know, in a certain way of being. And again, with Neptune here as well, Neptune being sextile to Capulus and Uranus, this is about being cut free from some really quite heavy, I would say, chains and illusions and stories that have kept us in one frame of reference. And this is about breaking free from that. So there's lots of different elements to this chart that are all feeding the same idea and the same theme. Saturn at 17 degrees of Pisces is still in a square to Rigel in Orion constellation. And again, same theme. Regel for me is about pushing forward, being able to push through confusion, through separation, through attempts to divide and conquer. And very much, with Saturn being in Pisces, this is about really sort of mastering the ability to come together and to embrace unity consciousness, but also to almost to step up and to step into mastery of our more spiritual selves. So with Rigel almost forcing that issue at this time. So, again, that's another nod to this whole breaking free and breaking through illusion. I just want to mention the final one, which is Tau Ceti in the Cetus constellation, exactly conjunct Chiron at this time. So in a slightly wider square to Mars and to Hawaii. And this for me is very much about sort of coming back to the theme of the home and the fact, there is a connection with Tau Ceti, as there are with several other stars in the chart, about displacement, about being sort of sent away or forced to leave the home, sort of refugee type scenario, galactic refugee, but this is such a big part of our galactic history where we've experienced displacement and loss and trauma through galactic wars. But with Tau Ceti being next to Chiron, it feels like it is time to heal that wound. And one of the ways we do that is by coming in to embrace the themes of the whale and the ocean and the womb ultimately. A real reminder that we don't always need a physical place to call home, that ultimately our home and that frequency of home is something that we can connect to because it lies within each of us at our core. And yes, it might sometimes be hard to find, but it is there regardless. So that's a really beautiful reminder. And although Chiron is in an air sign, Tau Ceti is very much linked to the power of water, of the oceans, of that void, that expanse, and also the beautiful symbolism that comes through the whale, which is very nurturing, very mothering, very majestic, very powerful. So there's some really beautiful themes there. So I'm going to leave it there, and hopefully, you've been able to follow some of the themes. It just feels so, so powerful. And for me, it feels like, the sowing of a seed of something that is absolutely, part of our future, part of humanity's evolution, that is deeply healing, but the healing comes through what potentially is going to be a massive awakening and something happening. What it is, I can't tell, obviously, but it just feels as if something is going to happen to literally break the spell, to help us to wake up. It's very much like Sleeping Beauty. And, we'll suddenly wake up and everything will look very different because we'll be seeing our reality in a totally different light. And Uranus, is about to station direct and really start to move through, that third decan of Taurus, gathering momentum, breaking through and helping us to wake up. And as we do so, we're going to almost have that spiritual awakening, with all that really strong Piscean energy helping us to rise up into a high level of consciousness, which ultimately I feel is part of humanity's journey and path and way forward. So if you've got this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've resonated with what I've shared. I wish you, the most magical new moon. It feels really, really powerful, coming into the year of the snake as well. So it is very much time to let go and shed all those layers so that we can almost create something from scratch, something new, that is really going to help us sort of embrace our future selves and our future versions of reality and experience here on Earth. So if you are not yet on my mailing list and you would like to join that, I invite you to do so. Sign up via my website, spiralbright.co.uk. And yeah, again, you can find out information about the different readings that I offer using traditional and galactic astrology to help you really explore some of the deeper themes connected to your soul journey, your soul mission, your life path, and and so much more, or your starseed ancestry, etc. So please do look at that if you are interested in working with me. And I'm going to leave it there. So all the very best, and I will be back soon.